Welcome to Heart of the Battle, where we stop treating spiritual warfare like it's a metaphor and start facing the reality that there are real forces working to tear apart everything good God is trying to build in you.
This is the podcast where we go beneath the surface, where faith isn't filtered, and love isn't something to perform. We talk about the war behind your relationships, your identity, and your walk with God.
I'm Daniel Morris, writer, teacher, and someone who had to unlearn a lot of what the internet told me about love and faith.
And I'm Elizabeth Morris, mother, educator, and someone who's watched too many people chase influence when what they really needed was intimacy with God.
Today's episode is about a pattern that's showing up more and more, and it's doing real damage. We're talking about Christian influencer couples. The ones whose love stories are beautifully documented, polished, and shared for the world to see. But what starts as inspiration can quickly become imitation. And when we begin to idolize someone else's love story, we risk losing sight of our own.
Let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with sharing your testimony. There is beauty in encouraging others through what God has done in your life. But the moment we elevate the image above the intimacy, the moment we trade God's voice for someone else's aesthetic, that's when performance replaces presence.
That's when spiritual formation is traded for Christian branding. And before we know it, we're not even praying for God's will anymore. We're praying for someone else's outcome. We're no longer pursuing relationship with God. We're chasing a platform, a vibe, a Christian couple storyline that looks holy but lacks real spiritual foundation.
And that's dangerous, not just for them, but for us. Because what we idolize, we imitate. And what we imitate often becomes a cheap substitute for what God actually wants to create in us.
So, no, we're not here to bash influencers, or we're not here to shame people who share. We're here to challenge the culture of performance. We're here to call out the idolatry that sneaks in when we stop seeking God privately and start obsessing over what looks anointed online.
This is a call back to discernment, to humility, to the kind of spiritual intimacy that doesn't need an audience to be valid.
So if you're tired of the pressure to look the part, if you're confused about why your love life doesn't look like the ones you see online, if you've been performing faith but struggling to connect with God personally, this one is for you.
Let's get into it.
We've made an idol out of the algorithm. Let's just start there because we don't even realize it's happening, how slowly, subtly, and spiritually we're being shaped by what we scroll past, like, and repost. And for many people, the greatest spiritual influence in their life isn't scripture. It's a curated couple who posts devotionals and proposal videos in matching neutral tones. It's two people who look like they love Jesus and each other, and maybe they do. But the moment we elevate them in our hearts, we've crossed into idolatry.
And let's call it what it is. Because this isn't just about relationships. This is about discipleship. Who are you being formed by? Because if you're spending more time watching their testimony than building your own, you're already off track. If your prayer life dries up every time they post another milestone, that's not admiration. That's spiritual interference.
It's not that Christian couples online are evil. That's not what we're saying. Some of them are sincere, some of them are called, some of them are even anointed. But the danger isn't them. The danger is what we do with their image. Because once you start to believe that love looks like what you see online, you stop being led by the Spirit and start being led by someone else's highlight reel.
And that's when the enemy has you. Because now he doesn't have to tempt you with something sinful. He can tempt you with something spiritual looking. He can keep you locked in jealousy, comparison, or pressure. And you'll think it's God convicting you when it's actually your own idol trying to keep you unsatisfied.
That's the thing about idolatry. It always wears a good disguise. Like, it doesn't come with a warning label. It comes wrapped in inspiration. You think you're just being encouraged, but deep down, you're growing bitter. You're wondering why your story doesn't look like theirs. You're starting to believe God forgot you, delayed you, maybe even skipped over you.
And let me say this from a place of love. God did not skip you. He's protecting you from building a relationship on borrowed blueprints. He's protecting you from chasing something you don't have the spiritual maturity to carry yet. And He's calling you back to alignment, back to His presence, back to the quiet places where your love story actually starts, with Him.
Because the truth is, love stories that last don't start with a viral moment. They start with private obedience. They start with surrender. They start when you decide that you'd rather be hidden in God's will than visible without His covering.
But that's not what the feed is teaching. The feed says, build a brand, be seen, document everything. Even your healing becomes content. Even your waiting season becomes performance. Even your faith becomes a formula for a relationship. And what you don't realize is you're not preparing for covenant. You're preparing to compete.
And competition is the opposite of covenant. Covenant is built in love, trust, patience, and surrender. Competition is built in pressure, insecurity, and pride. So now you're not asking God for love. You're asking Him for something you can post. You're praying for visibility, not victory.
I want to say this gently but clearly. God is not going to give you a relationship just to prove a point to your followers. He's not obligated to match your timeline, your aesthetic, or your brand. He's not interested in your image. He's after your heart.
That's why some of y'all feel stuck. Not because God isn't speaking, but because you've let the feed become your Bible. You've let the algorithm become your confirmation. You don't move unless someone you follow already did it first. That's not faith. That's mimicry. And mimicry doesn't produce anointing, it produces frustration.
And eventually, it produces burnout. Because performing spirituality will always cost more than it gives. You can't keep faking peace, faking clarity, faking trust in God, and expect to receive the real thing.
Here's the danger. When you idolize a Christian couple, you don't just want their relationship, you want their results. And you'll start negotiating with God for outcomes, not intimacy. You'll start thinking, if I just do what they did, say what they said, wait how they waited, then maybe I'll get what they got. But God is not looking to copy someone else's story in your life. He's looking to write His own.
That's the shift we're praying for in this episode. Not just that you stop idolizing couples online, but that you stop thinking you need to earn love by performing faith. God is not a reward system. He's a father, and He knows what you need before you even post about it.
So if you're feeling convicted right now, don't run from that. That's not shame, that's clarity. God is giving you an invitation to stop building your expectations on a screen and start letting Him build something sacred in you.
Turn down the volume of comparison. Mute the noise of pressure. Unfollow whatever makes you question God's timing. And start listening again for His voice. Because He still speaks. And He's still writing beautiful, wild, holy love stories. But He doesn't post them for validation. He authors them in obedience.
If idolizing Christian couples is the symptom, then this is the sickness. Performative Christianity is this mindset that says, as long as it looks spiritual, it must be blessed. It's the culture that rewards appearances over authenticity, curated captions over actual conviction, And it's quietly wrecking a generation that knows how to sound holy in public, but doesn't know how to sit with God in private.
That's right. And here's the hard part. Performative faith feels good for a while. It gives you the feedback, the affirmation, the sense of momentum. You post your devotional stack. You quote a sermon. You make a reel about waiting on God. And people applaud it. They cheer you on. But deep down, if you're honest, you're spiritually starving because likes can't sustain you. Engagement doesn't equal encounter.
And let me speak from experience. It's entirely possible to be talking about God and still be far from Him, to say the right things, post the right scriptures, wear the right clothes, follow the right people, and still not know the God you're representing.
Because real faith doesn't need an audience to be valid. Real faith is quiet. It's tested. It's refined in private. It shows up in the choices no one claps for. It shows up when you forgive instead of getting petty. It shows up when you delete the text, when you surrender the outcome, when you pray and don't post about it.
And here's the part most people don't talk about. When your relationship with God becomes performance-based, your relationships with people start breaking down too. Because now, love isn't something you live out. It's something you perform. You're not trying to build connection. You're trying to prove worth. You're trying to earn love by appearing righteous. You think, if I just show up like the kind of Christian they're looking for, maybe I'll finally be chosen.
It's exhausting. And it's not from God. God never asked you to perform. He asked you to abide, to dwell with Him, to grow in Him, to trust Him enough to show up messy and unfiltered. Because He's not impressed with your spiritual resume. He's after your surrender.
But performance will keep you on a treadmill. You'll keep posting, keep striving, keep watching what others are doing, trying to reverse engineer their outcome. And eventually you'll crash. Because performing faith takes energy you don't have. And it keeps you from receiving the intimacy you need.
This is where the enemy loves to live, right in the cracks between performance and pressure. He whispers, "Keep going. You're almost there. Just look more holy. Just wait a little longer. Just make it look like you're thriving." And before you know it, you're disconnected from God, disillusioned about love, and doubting everything He ever promised you.
But it doesn't feel like spiritual warfare because everything looks good. You're still saying all the right things. Your feed still looks anointed. Your reels still say glory to God. But behind the scenes, you're burnt out. You're bitter. You're spiritually dry and emotionally done.
And that's the trap. Because performative Christianity can carry you into burnout and breakdown, and no one will know you're struggling. Because the brand still looks clean. But God knows. And He's not condemning you for it. He's calling you out of it. Back into a relationship that doesn't need to be dressed up to be real.
And here's the thing. When we confuse performance with spiritual health, we start making decisions that are rooted in fear of perception, not faith in God. You won't break up with the wrong person because you've already posted them. You won't slow down because people are watching you walk in purpose. You won't confess that you're doubting God because you just gave a testimony last week. So now your identity is trapped in the image you built. And instead of growing, you're shrinking under the weight of your own spiritual performance.
That's not freedom. That's bondage, dressed in church clothes. And hear me, God doesn't bless the image. He blesses the surrender. He blesses the tears you cry in the car. He blesses the obedience that no one sees. He blesses the 4 a.m. prayer when you didn't even have the words. just a groan and a need for Him.
You want real breakthrough? Then you have to be real with God. You have to stop performing and start abiding. You have to let go of looking like a Christian and actually become a disciple. Because love that lasts, love that's holy, whole, and heaven sent, doesn't come through performance. It comes through presence, His presence.
And let's say this again, just to be clear. We're not saying don't share your story. We're not saying you have to be quiet, hidden, or never speak. Testimony is powerful. God does use platforms, but your post can never replace your prayer life. Your reach can never replace your relationship. Your influence can never replace your intimacy.
So this is your invitation, not into silence, but into surrender. Not into disappearing, but into disarming yourself of the performance that's keeping you spiritually empty. God is not impressed by your curated faith. He's drawn to your honest one.
Come back to the place where you and God are enough, where you don't need to prove anything, where you can lay it all down, your timeline, your audience, your image, and just be loved. Because that's where real faith lives, and that's where real love begins.
We've torn down the idol, we've pulled the mask off performance. Now let's build something real. Because here's the truth. God is not interested in copying someone else's blueprint for your life. He's writing yours line by line, day by day, season by season. And what He's writing in you might not look like anybody else's story, but it's still holy.
That's right. And I want to speak this with love and with authority. You are not behind. You are not broken. You have not missed your moment. What God is building in you requires different tools, different timing, and a different level of trust than the people you're comparing yourself to.
Because here's what comparison doesn't tell you. It doesn't show the cost. It doesn't show the spiritual war behind the scenes. It doesn't show the tears they cried, the battles they fought, the process they had to survive. And most of all, it doesn't show you what God is asking of you in your story, your life, your assignment.
God is not in the business of duplication. He's in the business of design. He's a creator, not a copycat. He's not looking at that couple on Instagram and trying to replicate it in your life. He's looking at you saying, let me show you what only I can build through you.
And if you're constantly measuring your progress against someone else's post, you'll miss what God is trying to do and you're present. God's not calling you to build faster. He's calling you to build deeper. Because surface level love can be cute online, but legacy level love, that's different. That's the kind of love that has to be anchored, not advertised.
And I know some people are listening right now thinking, but I've done everything right. I've waited, I've healed, I've served, I've stayed pure. Why hasn't it happened for me? And I hear your heart. I do. But let me gently tell you, God is not a formula. He's a Father. And your faithfulness isn't wasted. It's preparation, not punishment.
Sometimes God delays a blessing, not because you're not ready to receive, but because He's still working on the soil that is going to be planted in. And that soil, that's your character. That's your intimacy with Him. That's your trust when nothing's happening. He's not trying to withhold from you. He's trying to build within you.
And He knows exactly what kind of foundation you need to carry the weight of what you're praying for. Because love that's from God won't just feel good. It will require something from you. It will stretch you. It will sanctify you. It will sharpen your prayer life. And if you're not grounded in your own relationship with God, you'll make that person your source instead of Him.
That's why the blueprint has to come from heaven, not the internet, not your friends, not even your own timeline. God's not building you for a photo shoot. He's building you for purpose, and that kind of construction takes time.
Let's be real. God's process rarely makes sense. Ask Abraham, ask Joseph, ask Ruth, ask Mary. Ask anyone in the Word who followed God through seasons of silence, delay, confusion, or public shame. God wasn't copying someone else's story. He was writing something eternal.
And He's doing the same in you, but you've got to give Him space to write. You've got to stop trying to edit the narrative based on what you saw work for someone else. You can't fast track faithfulness. You can't shortcut surrender. And you can't build a holy relationship by trying to photocopy someone else's highlight reel.
God is asking you to trust His voice more than their visibility. Because if He gave you what they had, it wouldn't fit you. It wouldn't stretch you. It wouldn't refine you. It wouldn't call you into the version of yourself that He's forming right now.
That's why this is a trust issue, not a timing issue. The question is no longer, God, when will it happen? The question is, God, will I still follow you even if it doesn't look like theirs?
And listen, when you stop trying to copy someone else's covenant and start embracing your own season, that's when peace comes in. That's when contentment starts to take root. That's when you stop begging for blessings and start walking in alignment.
Alignment is when you can say, God, I trust you to do this your way, even if it's slower, even if it's quieter, even if nobody claps for it. That's spiritual maturity. And that's the posture that opens the door for God-written love stories, the kind that can't be manufactured, marketed, or mimicked.
So here's what I want to say to the one who feels overlooked. God sees you. He sees your surrender. He sees your growth. He sees the way you're choosing holiness, even when it hurts. And He has not forgotten you. He's not running late. He's building something worth the wait.
And maybe that love story doesn't start in a viral reel. Maybe it starts right here, right now, with a heart that says, God, I don't need what they have. I need what you have for me.
That's the posture of a person who's ready for covenant. Not because you performed your way into a blessing, but because you trusted your way into alignment.
He's not copying their blueprint. He's writing something better, something that fits your spirit, something that builds legacy, something real. And if you let Him, He'll write the kind of story you couldn't have posted if you tried, because it'll be too deep, too sacred, too God. By now, you've probably noticed this isn't really an episode about influencers. It's not even about relationships. It's about your relationship with God, the one relationship that defines every other one in your life. And if that relationship is out of alignment, no amount of godly content, couple goals, or Christian branding will fix the gap in your spirit.
That's what this all comes back to. We've spent so much energy chasing relationship goals when the only real goal was always relationship with God. Not religion, not performance, not optics. Just Him, just presence, just communion.
See, the enemy wants to keep you chasing other people's lives. He wants you so obsessed with the appearance of love that you never slow down enough to hear God speak into your love life. He doesn't need you to run from God. He just needs you distracted, busy, discontent, always watching, but never seeking.
And you can be surrounded by Christian content and still be starving for intimacy with Christ. Because spiritual hunger doesn't get satisfied through scrolling. It gets satisfied in secret when it's just you and God. No audience, no filter, no agenda.
This is what it means to return. It means putting down your phone, not forever, but long enough to listen. It means stepping away from comparison, from curated standards, from the noise of everyone else's journey, and saying, God, I miss you. Not just what you can give me, not just the promises. I miss you.
Because when you lose your way in love, the solution is not to study somebody else's relationship. It's to return to the one who loved you first. He knew your name before you had a platform. He knew your pain before you had words. He knew your purpose before you ever prayed for a partner.
And he's not asking you to wait perfectly. He's asking you to walk with him, to include him in the frustration, to cry when it hurts, and to trust even when it doesn't make sense. Because love isn't a reward for performance, it's a gift that grows in the soil of surrender.
And this isn't just about romance. This is about alignment. Because some of you have been asking God for the right person, but God is asking you to become the person who can carry what he's preparing. And you can't do that in envy. You can't do that in performance. You can't do that while worshiping someone else's path.
And here's the thing. Returning to relationship doesn't always feel like a dramatic altar call. Sometimes it's just a whisper, a decision, a turning of the heart. Lord, I am tired of chasing the idea of you. I just want you. And that small surrender, that moment of truth, that's where the real work begins.
Because God is not interested in having your attention for 30 minutes on a Sunday or a scroll through during a spiritual quote. He wants your heart. He wants your trust. He wants your presence, right in the middle of your loneliness, your longing, your confusion. Not cleaned up, not branded, just real.
So if you've been caught in the cycle of comparison, of spiritual performance, of waiting and watching and wondering if God still sees you, hear us. He does. He sees every private surrender, every time you chose holiness when it would have been easier to compromise, every moment you said yes to him, even when no one was clapping.
And he hasn't forgotten your desire. But he loves you too much to give you a relationship that would pull you away from him. He's protecting you. He's pruning you. He's preparing you, not punishing you.
So today isn't just a wake-up call, it's an invitation to return to the place where your value isn't determined by visibility, to return to the kind of love that doesn't perform, it perseveres, to return to the only relationship that doesn't ask for perfection, just presence.
Maybe your story is still being written. Maybe the waiting has felt longer than you expected. Maybe your heart's a little tired of watching everyone else walk into their moment while you feel stuck in your process. But I promise you this: the pen is still in God's hand. And when he writes it, it's worth the wait.
So stop chasing someone else's ending and start trusting the author. Because the relationship you're waiting for will never satisfy you the way his presence already can.
And when you get that part right, when God becomes your source, not just your strategy, everything else begins to fall into place. Not perfectly, not instantly, but peacefully. Because now you're not following relationship goals. You're walking in God's will.
And there's no comparison for that. No performance that can top that. No influencer, no aesthetic, no timeline that could ever offer what the presence of God does in your love life. So come home, return to relationship, and let the one who knows you most lead you best. Thank you for listening to Heart of the Battle. We don't take your time or your spiritual walk lightly.
Our deepest prayer is that this episode didn't just challenge you. It called you closer. Closer to truth. Closer to healing. Closer to God.
Because what he's building in you is bigger than a platform, deeper than a feeling, and stronger than any performance could ever be. It's real, and it's worth fighting for.
If you're walking through this kind of spiritual reset, or just need encouragement in your own process, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It's where we share prayers, scriptures, and strategies to help you stay grounded between the episodes.
So stay armored, stay aligned, and more than anything, stay close to the one who never stops writing your story.
We love you. We're praying for you. And we'll see you next time.